I'm here with Dan Fazio of Roots of Wellness. And Dan, we had a conversation about the fact that musculoskeletal disorders are something that have become very common.
Yes.
Partly because of the way that workstations are set up these days and what we ask our bodies to do.
Yes.
You talked about how duration of the activity, the nature of the activity, and
Yes.
things like that can contribute to disorders like carpal tunnel and other things.
Yes.
So here's my question to you. Given the fact that so many of us are working in these kinds of environments and imposing these kinds of stresses on our body that we really don't even understand are happening,
Yes.
how do we prevent these disorders from showing up? What can we do to keep ourselves healthy and get ahead of that musculoskeletal disorder curve?
Great question. There's really three different components to fixing this problem.
All right.
Okay. The first one is, in fact, ergonomic design or workstation layout. Okay. So there needs to be an evaluation done, and this is relatively simple. I supply folks with a checklist that they can take
Okay.
to their office and
All right.
sit down and actually evaluate. But we look at things like a computer screen, finding that it is in fact in line with the vantage point of an individual's eyes, so they're not having to look up or down to access that.
So they should be looking straight ahead, is that it?
That's ideal.
Okay.
We also want to make sure that the chair that they're sitting in and the work surface that their keyboard or mouse is on, because most often these are the environments in which we address, especially when technology is the interface that folks are having to do all day long, which is increasingly the case. The workstation audit, as I call it, involves making sure that screen is at eye level, that the keyboard ideally is something called an ergonomic keyboard. You may have seen this before where the keyboard's
Yes.
actually split.
Yes.
That just allows the elbows to sit a little bit wider, more comfortable, and puts the tendons and the pull patterns of those tendons in line with the muscles. It's more keeping with.
Well, you're talking about
design.
some really subtle things that apparently make a big difference.
Makes a huge difference. The second factor, after you evaluate the workstation and make those changes, is making sure you're taking breaks.
All right.
Okay? I will say, this is the second factor I'm talking about, but this is probably as important as the workstation design.
Okay.
Per unit of time that an individual's sitting and working, I like to say every 20 minutes, but it could be down to every 30 minutes, so at least a couple times an hour, ideally 3 times an hour. Get up from the workstation. A brief overhead reach, okay? Deep inhalation,
Okay.
overhead reach, and then exhale while reaching side to side with the arms overhead,
Okay.
and then sitting back down in the chair. This takes roughly 30 seconds, and this can help reset tissues through the entire body and help to balance and prevent these repetitive motions.
So that's a little bit more than just getting up and walking around the workstation or just walking to the bathroom or something like that. You're talking about resetting certain things. So it's not just a matter of pausing.
Yes.
It's performing these body mechanical functions.
It is, in fact, and this is ideal to have a micro break that involves an overhead reach like that and actually taking the time to change your breathing pattern. That's ideal, but I don't want folks to think that they have to go to that extent in order to gain the benefits.
I see.
Do know that just getting up from your workstation, standing up, and then sitting right back down has tremendous benefit also. Okay, so we've got our best case scenario, which is a micro break, which actually involves a mini exercise, albeit a short duration one, but a mini exercise. But even getting up, walking into the water cooler, getting a drink, and sitting back down, but doing that in time intervals such that someone's not sitting at their workstation for hours on end without a break. That's really the key.
Here's a question. I'm sure there are people out there like me that sometimes I'm involved in a project or I'm doing something on my computer and I'm just so into it that time is going by so fast and I feel like, I'm just really jamming on this project.
Yes.
So how then do you trigger that break? I mean, do people sometimes set a little alarm or?
The wonderful thing is now there's so many of us have phones that have alarm capabilities that can be pre-programmed. That's ideal. Also, an expensive timer can be set, but just have that time interval pre-programmed in there, and you just tap the button, and when it goes off, take the time to take that break. The third component that I want to talk about in preventing repetitive motion injuries or musculoskeletal disorders is having a practice outside work and outside your workstation that tends to bring your body back into balance. Okay? Yoga is a fantastic example of this. Pilates. Riding a bicycle exercises your body in a much different way than sitting. So it's not so much that there's just one exercise or a small group of exercise options people have. It's just getting out and engaging muscle groups in a different way. The fact of the matter is, sitting for too long of a period has deleterious effects that are far-reaching, beyond even what we've talked about today. So having a practice outside your work, it's fantastic. Walking and allowing your arms to swing naturally as they do with a walking gait is fantastic and resets many of the musculoskeletal control factors that can be disrupted from prolonged sitting and workstation arrangements that are less than ideal. So yeah, it does not have to be high impact or high exertion, but a regimen that is consistent, because we do spend so much time seated and working at our workstations. You know, as a third component, it's great to have an outside practice that brings you into balance.
And so what are those 3 points again?
The first one is workstation audit or evaluation, making sure that you're meeting those criteria for a balanced workstation. The second one is making sure that we're taking micro breaks. As simple as just standing up from your seated position and then sitting down again. The more complex end of it takes about 30 seconds, and that's standing up and actually doing an overhead reach type stretch with a nice inhalation and exhalation. And then the third component, actually creating a physical activity that helps to balance the rest of the time that you're awake from the workstation insult that's added from sitting and working so much. So that's the third component.
Dan, that is so helpful. Thank you for joining us today.
Sure. Thank you, Steve.
All right.